Hey everybody, welcome back to Hot Cakes and Hot Reads for the William Jeans Memorial Library. My name is Adam Gilbert Cole. I'm the Adult Services Librarian at William Jeans, and I feel like these videos are going to be a nice video progression of how wild my hair can get during the stay-at-home order. Thanks as always to William Jeans patron John Lewis for his suggestion for this program. It's been a lot of fun looking up pancake recipes and coming up with ideas for this. So, some of the books I'm going to talk about today are available through our library catalog. You can go into the catalog and request them, or you can download them as ebooks or audiobooks from our Overdrive account. You can do that through the app Libby, which you can find in your app store on your various devices, your phones and your tablets. Today, we are going to make fluffy Japanese pancakes. It's an experiment for all of us because I've never done this before, so bear with me as we do this together. But the idea behind the fluffy Japanese pancakes is that we have a very light batter made mostly of whipped egg whites and other pancake materials. So we'll talk about that. It's gonna sort of look a little bit like when we made lemon ricotta pancakes a couple a month ago now. Wow. But it'll come out very different in the end because we have ring molds that we're going to use in the skillet and everything. Okay, so I have 210 grams of all-purpose flour. Helpful to have a kitchen scale for that because a lot of these recipes come with that kind of measurement. America being one of the only places in the world that doesn't use the metric system. I have 4 tables of sugar, white sugar, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder. This is a fun one. A tablespoon of Japanese mayonnaise, which I ordered off of Amazon. I don't know what makes it different than American mayonnaise, but it called for Japanese mayonnaise, so why not? The mayonnaise gives it a really nice texture from everything I read. The mayonnaise is optional, but we're gonna give it a shot. I have vanilla extract. This was made by my brother-in-law. I have 2 egg yolks that I almost just poured out. 200 milliliters of buttermilk. And the vital ingredient, the whipped egg whites. So whipping the egg whites is the key to this so that they don't collapse. We're going to find out if I did it right. But you can either under-whip them or over-whip them. And if you don't get it right in that right spot, either they don't have enough air in them to sustain the integrity, or they're too whipped and they collapse when they start cooking. So. All right, so let's talk about our first book now that I've showed off the ingredients, and I'll start mixing things together. This is Snow Country by Yasunari Kawabata. He is a he's passed away. He was a Nobel Prize winner, a Japanese writer, and this was one of the books that they cited, that the Nobel Prize Committee cited when they gave him the award. It's a spare little book. It's less than 200 pages. And it's really melancholy. It's set in a Japanese town in the north of the country, and it's in a hot springs area where there are a lot of inns and hotels set up around these hot springs, and it's set in the early parts of the 1900s. And it stars Shimamura, who is a soul traveling sort of wealthy man, and who falls in love with the story is sort of skirts around this issue with one of the geishas that works in that hot spring town. And the geishas in that town are not the sort of geishas that we think of when they talk about geisha in Japanese culture, full of like that real stylized art and stuff like that. These are women who are basically prostitutes, in that town at least. And so like I said, it's a really spare story. It's really melancholy, and it's really beautiful. The writing itself is a lot of critics compare it to haiku because of the way that it sort of intersperses these little scenes, one on top of the other, on top of the other, to build up to a feeling, a sort of revelation. The characters can't be together in the end, and there's another character who Shimomura is sort of also obsessed with in the book. It's one of those books that you just read and you come away from feeling like you have experienced something in another culture, I guess. Kawabata's purpose for writing the book was to sort of show a sort of historical Japanese tradition and kind of write it as an anti-Western, I guess, book. But in the end, it's a really beautiful story that kind of keeps the characters apart. I'm not selling it, but I love it. All right, so I'm going to mix these things together. The egg yolks go in with the sugar, the buttermilk, our 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla, so a very light dash of vanilla in here, and the mayonnaise. All right, so dribble, and the mayonnaise, and then I'm going to whisk it together. So our next book is one that I'm going to bet a lot of people have actually read, just because it is constantly on hold at the library. And that is Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee. I think a favorite of book clubs, and rightly so. It is a story that takes place in both Korea and Japan and centers on Korean characters. It begins in the early part of the 1900s again, and follows characters as they travel through Korea and Japan. They live in exile for a while, through the end of the book. It's a multi-generational historical fiction, and the writing is sort of the opposite of the last book we talked about, Kawabata. It is very sort of dense and lush. The descriptions are really, really fulfilling. The character relationships are beautifully drawn, and the people in the book are like real people. You know, one of those beautiful times when an author actually accomplishes that goal of making the characters realized people. So I would recommend it for anybody who's looking for a great discussion for book clubs. The main reason that I love it, and one of the reasons that I love to read historical fiction, I don't read a lot of nonfiction, and I think that's mostly because I really do relate. I learn through people, I guess. I learn through people's experience. And so I read, when I read historical fiction, one of the things I'm hoping to do is learn about these people's cultures. And this book does a beautiful job of building for the reader the sort of rural, poor Korean experience, and also the experience of Koreans in exile in Japan. One of the things that I knew a little bit about going into, but not very much, is that there is a fair amount of prejudice against Koreans in Japan, that the countries in Asia have a long, tangled history. And so reading it from these characters, or seeing it from these characters' perspectives, helped me to understand a little bit more of what's going on in that corner of the world. It's also a pretty big undertaking, this book. It's all like almost 500 pages, and so if you're looking for something to keep you busy during the summer, this is a great one. All right, so that is Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee. You can put a hold on that in our library catalog. We have many, many copies in the library system. You can look for it in Libby, because I know that it is there. All right, so I've got my ingredients, the wet ingredients mixed together here. At this point, I'm going to stir this into the flour and the baking powder, which I am going to actually sift together first. If I can find one of my whisks, but they're all dirty. So, all right. So the thing that makes these pancakes fluffy, like I said earlier, is that whipped egg white. You can call them souffle pancakes because if you've whipped them right, the consistency should come out a little like a souffle. But we're gonna see. Here goes nothing. All right, so wet ingredients. In this case, I'm putting them into the dry ingredients. Normally, you do it backwards, only because I mixed up what I was doing here. All right. So, folding these in to get a batter that we are going to then fold some of the egg whites into, just to get a little bit of a start with the consistency. So I've got my batter here, very dry. And then the egg white will thin it out. All right. Okay, so egg whites. All right, so the next book that I want to talk about, I am going to give a content warning for because it is a book about horrible war crimes. And so I want everybody to be prepared. You can feel free to turn me off for a few minutes and come back after I'm done talking about this book, but there is a content warning here. This book is going to talk about rape and war crimes committed against civilians. So, this book is The Rape of Nanking by Iris Chang. It is one of those books that is important with a capital I. Hi, Sarah. It is important with a capital I, and I think lots and lots of people should read it, but it is also not for everyone. So, this book is about the Japanese invasion of the Chinese city Nanking in December of 1937. One of the things we learn a lot about in America is all of the horrible things that happened in World War II in the European front. We don't learn a lot about what happened between the countries in Asia during that time. So I think that, like I said, this is an important book to understand some of the history of what happened and what happens in war. So this book also has a bit of a controversy surrounding it in the field of historians sort of debate whether it's accurate or not, because Iris Chang sourced her information from oral history. There is very little written about this book, or about this time period, and so the primary... Boy, this batter is going to be interesting, y'all. The primary information that she used came from oral interviews, and so a lot of people in the fields that study these time periods question her methods and the information that came out of it, because, as we know, memory is a very very delicate thing. But so it's the story of, or it's a historical account of the Japanese invasion of Nanking in 1937, December. I said that already. But when the soldiers invaded, they committed some really brutal crimes against the local population. So the story is told from the point of view of the Japanese soldiers doing the invading, the Chinese civilians who are being invaded, and some Westerners who tried to create a safe zone to save some of the people in Nanking at the time. Some 300,000 people are suspected of having been murdered during that time by the Japanese forces, and it took a very, very, very long time for the Japanese people, the government, to even admit to this having occurred. This book was actually published around in 1997, I believe, around the time when this was coming up again. So the 50th anniversary of the event, Iris Chang published this book to try to get some some recognition for the atrocity. I think people should read the book. It is a really, really hard read, and so don't beat yourself up if you can't do it. But it's one of those books that should probably be taught in lots of places. All right. Now, here we go. This batter is looking strange, y'all, so let's see how this turns out. I have my skillet on. I have my ring molds, which are how we get these souffle pancakes. I've got baking spray, actually just cooking spray, but I'm going to spray the inside lightly, spray the pan lightly, let that heat up, get out my oven mitt, ta-da-da, and then we're going to scoop some of this stuff in and see what happens once this turns on. All right, so my last book that I want to talk about today is The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle by Haruki Murakami. This book started me on a deep dive for this author, just because I loved it so much the first time I read it. And gosh, this was probably back in the late 2000s, 2007, 2008, something like that. I took such a deep dive on this guy that at some point I came back around and requested a bunch of his books from the library and started reading books. And I would get about 50 pages in and I'd be like, I read this book before. But not this one. I always know this one because it's so strange and beautiful at the same time. This Murakami is a very famous Japanese writer, and he's famous for his style, which is sort of different from a lot of other people. He writes in a way that makes his translations really easy, and so somehow the style feels both like flat and stark, but also like lively and winding at the same time. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but it makes for a really captivating blend of prose. So the story centers on a man named Toru who, through most of the book, is searching for his wife who has disappeared, Kumiko. One of the blurbs calls this book dreamlike and compelling, and I think that's probably the best way to describe it. While it centers and has a sense of realism about it, there are a lot of elements to it that mimic dreams. There are people in it, Toru himself, and then another character end up in a well, a deep well in isolation and discovering some strange things about themselves, and also being able to travel their way into other dimensions. I'm not really sure. But also there's a missing cat that sort of comes and goes throughout the story. That's how the story starts. Toru is searching for his cat that's gone missing. There is an evil brother who is obsessed with his sister. The book has a lot of material in it, so stick with it as you're going. All right, so my pan is getting hot. The book has a lot. This batter is going to not turn out, everybody. I'm sorry, but let's give it a shot. All right, so the book has a lot to say about desire and power, about isolation and connection. It's not my favorite book of Murakami's. That's actually Kafka on the Shore, but it's like I said, a really strange and worthwhile read. And he is cited, he's a contemporary writer, he's still writing. I actually haven't read his most recent book, Killing Commendatore, which I should, now that I think about it. But he is one of the best-selling authors in Japan right now, and he's always published in translation. So, John, yes, I did read A Wild Sheep Chase. His books are strange, and I have a hard time sometimes keeping them in straight in my head. But that's one that you don't forget. That's such a strange book. A Wild Sheep Chase. Yeah, seriously, I don't think I can recommend. I don't think there's a book of his that I can't recommend, even when he gets sort of self-indulgent. He's one of those writers who has gotten so big that a lot of editors won't touch his work, I guess, which is I think, what happened with his book 1Q84. It's like 1,000 pages long, and I think probably could have been about 600, 500. Anyway, even the books that are self-indulgent are worth it for me, because it's a style of book that I love. So, all right, here we go. We got some nice, light, fluffy pancakes that appear to be turning out. What a miracle! All right. I am going to... They're starting to bubble on the top here, so I'm gonna get my spatula under them. And... I should have a different set of gloves for this, everybody. Let's see how this goes. You're about to watch me burn myself on Facebook Live. Yup. Well, they would turn out if I could flip them okay. All right, here we go. I was not betting this batter was going to turn out. All right, beautiful. Here they come. All right, everybody. Okay, so I will get some of these plated here in just a second. Although I don't have a plate handy, so bear with me while I go into my cabinet and pull a plate out. So if anybody's been reading anything great lately, you should leave that in the comments. When we're done here, I'm going to also post a link to the books that I've discussed and the recipe that I have used in the comments on this Facebook video and on our website, jeanslibrary.org. I'm happy to say that next week I get to go back to the library and start getting ready to reopen so that we can serve our community once again. If you are, if you're excited about that, or if you are looking for some books, you should check out, like I said, our website for our reopening plans. All right, so it's not cooked the whole way through, but this is how they turn out, everybody. It is starting to collapse a little bit, so I did not get the egg whites perfect, but we will keep trying. Quite the experiment. I was not sure that that was going to work, everybody. All right, I'm going to put this one over here. And come back. All right, so I'm going to keep going, making these for my family who's about to come home. Like I said, check the library website, jeanslibrary.org, and please leave us comments on our Facebook page or email us, jeansinfo@mclink.org, if you have questions about our virtual programs, our reopening plans, or anything that's happening during the summer. We are going to be launching summer reading program for adults, kids, and teens on June 20th, so look for more information about that. My pan is smoking, so I'm going to go, everybody. Nice to see you, and I will see you soon.